So when Jeanette talks about Winshuttle Studio, this is a product that is a desktop product and it lives as an Excel add-in inside your Excel. So the way you access it is you go to the Winshuttle Run tab, and it does have its own Excel ribbon. And you'll notice here that we're logged into Winshuttle and we're logged onto SAP. And when you're logged onto SAP, it's going to take your credentials and look at what you have access to whenever you go to upload something in SAP. So if you're trying to upload something in SAP that you don't have access to, you won't be allowed to using Winshuttle. In addition to that, when you do upload something into SAP, it will go in as if you manually typed it. So it's going to record your user ID in that history in SAP as well. So, and just a quick little note here, we have a lot of cases where customers want to enter data into like a test system or quality system before they enter it into production. So it's pretty easy to do. So I would just log off of this SAP system and then click the button to log on to another SAP system. So very quick to switch back and forth. So where Winshuttle comes into play is this next drop down. We've got a couple of things we can do here. So these are actually what we call Winshuttle scripts. And what that is the developer has designed these scripts based on a business process. So if they want to do some filtering, if they want to give you certain criteria, they're able to do that with this. So we're going to do what we like to call it Winshuttle a round trip today. So let's say you've got a lot of vendors that you need to change a couple fields on. If you go into SAP, you've got to go to each individual vendor and then you have to go into individual screens for each field that you need to update. So I'm going to show you how we can do that in one Excel spreadsheet. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to download the data the way it is in SAP right now. So I'm going to run a vendor master lookup. So this is actually querying SAP Live. I'm going to click Run. And you'll notice I've got a bunch of different criteria here. I've got some like criteria, greater than, equal to, equal to. You can also do things like between. You can do in a list, and that list can be a dynamic lookup or it can be a static lookup. And you'll notice also that we're requiring country key and we're requiring purchasing organization. So what's important here is maybe your business process requires a field that's not required in SAP. So if you're manually entering it in SAP, you would be able to skip that particular field if you forgot about it or overlooked it. Well, if you're running a Winshuttle script and you don't put in a required field, you won't be able to upload it into SAP. So we were talking about that missing data. This is how you're going to help prevent having missing data there. So if it's required, put it in. So in today's example, what we're going to do is we're going to look at all vendors with the planning group of PG and of the ones that have been created in the past year, and we're going to update a couple of fields for them. So I'm actually going out into my SAP system, running a live query, and this is keeping us up to date on what's going on. So it's reading that data out of SAP, and then once it finishes reading, it will write the data down to Excel for us. You'll notice in the spreadsheet, if you're familiar with the vendor master, we've got several different views in here. So there's organization information, contact information, accounting information, and purchasing information. So imagine if I'm just going to update just this short list of vendors and I need to update a couple fields, how long it would take me to individually go into SAP and change those. So what I want to do is I want to change this planning group from PG to A1. What the developer has done in the background is giving me a very short list of planning groups that I can choose from for this Excel spreadsheet. So in SAP, the list is very long, but I'm limiting them. So if I click on Lookup Values, oh, sorry about that. We're running a query. Let me explain. So I just ran a query, so I'm extracting data. I need to change my script to a upload script, and now I'll be able to look at my data. So before I'm able to upload, this is what's going to give me the capability to look up the data for that field. So now if I do lookup values, much better. Okay, so as you can see, I only have a list of 4, and in SAP I may have 20. Okay, but for this one, I can only choose these. This comes in handy if you've got a group, maybe a specific company code. They're only allowed to use this one particular one. Keeps people from making those kinds of mistakes. So I'm going to click on A1 here. And I can just copy and paste it all the way down here. Same thing for reconciliation account. There's tons of different accounts in SAP, but I'm only giving you the option to do one, or two rather. So I'm going to select the one I want, and I'll copy and paste it. So, and just for good measure, I'm going to throw in a couple of errors. Okay. So now I'm going to make changes to all of these, but before it goes into SAP, I want to look at the data and see if I get any errors. So we're able to do this using what's called validate. What validate does is it goes out into SAP and it checks to see if there's any errors. And of course, as you saw, I put some errors in there, so I did that on purpose. So we'll see those errors reported. So if you think about if you're uploading thousands of records or updating thousands of records, you can easily see which ones have errors, and then it communicates to you what the problem is. Now, you'll notice here, both of these particular errors are for lists, information that we've limited the values on. So for example, a payment term 30. So this one is a SAP error. So let me go up to my payment term column and fix that. Oh, I've got a typo there, so I just fixed that. Come home. And now this one is the vendor is not available. The company code is not available. And that's because I've limited this value here. So now it's going live into SAP, and we're going to pick a different vendor. Or, I'm sorry, company code. So now hopefully these have been fixed. So if you think about this being thousands of records and you have a few rows that have errors, you don't want to have to go back through every single one of those. So now I'm just going to do validate. And guess what? I can just do validate only the error rows. So at this point, it's only going to look at those two errors. And now my data looks good. So again, I have not written to SAP. I've only validated against SAP and against my business process rules above and beyond what's in SAP. So now if I'm ready to go ahead and run that and update those vendors, I'm just going to click Run. And you'll start to see changes have been made for each one of those. Did you notice when the screen flashed, I actually got a new tab added down here? So what this is I like to call it my backup button, or my undo button. So this goes out in SAP and looks at the values for the data the way they exist before you made the changes. So that automatically populates for you because our developer has turned this backup data box on, and it's going to automatically generate that backup data for you. So if you've mass uploaded something and you've made some mistakes and you need to go back and change those, you can certainly do that. So if I look at that backup data tab now, it's just raw data of what it was, and this is what it is. So this comes in handy for the auditors as well. So you'll notice just like that, we've updated 17 vendors, and this comes in handy anytime you want to update any addresses, email, anything like that. Now we've used this for vendor today, so I just want to mention this can be done for a lot of times for material master, customer master, plant maintenance, quality maintenance, all of those types of things too. So as we're looking through these demos today, keep that in mind. We're only looking at a very small piece of what Winshuttle can do. So now let's take a look at a little bit of a different view. Let me hop back over here. So the other piece that we have is called Foundation, and this is our enterprise software. And what we're doing here is today we're going to show a web form. So if you can imagine in the Vendor Master, what we were talking about earlier, you may have to go into a bunch of different screens. But what if you could take just the relevant fields off of those screens and put it on one form and then add some validation in there, just like what we did in Excel? And then in addition to that, you can have a workflow. So once this form has been submitted, it can go through different people, and a lot of times you've got some situations where you can have two people adding data at the same time, and I'll show you the workflow in a second. But to start with, this accounting and purchasing, so we're going to start this new vendor request, then accounting is going to get it and purchasing will get it at the same time. We'll wait for both of them to finish, and then once they're both finished, it moves on to the manager, the controller if required, and then on to the master data team to upload that data into SAP. So we see a lot of times with the material master, we may have assigned tasks to 3 or 4 people at the same time because they're updating different views in the material master that don't relate to each other. So you certainly can do that. You do not have to do them one after another. You can just do them all at once. That's a benefit, one of the benefits of using a web form. So what we're doing today, we're going to do a new vendor, and this is the actual workflow that will be followed. So we'll see it in motion now. So as you can see, this is the new web form. This is our vendor maintenance web form, and we've got a couple of options. We can create new, create copy, or update existing. And you'll notice if I hover over it, I've got instructions there for my user. You can have instructions on as many fields as you need and to help your user with the form. Some other things to point out is I'm auto-numbering the request. So if I need to say, hey, what about request number 78? Can we talk about that? Then I'll know exactly which one it was. I automatically am populating to whoever is logged into SharePoint at the moment, and then it automatically populates today's date. So I'm going to click on Create New. And remember we talked about searching for existing SAP vendors. So let me see, I'm going to create a new vendor, but I need to see if they're in there first. So I'm just going to put in a vendor name and execute query and see. So again, remember earlier when we were in Excel and we ran the query to pull the vendors that met our criteria, we're doing the same thing here. And there is a spectrum, but it's a little bit different than what I'm doing, but I can tell it's different from what I want. So I'm good to go. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my search box. So that's going to keep you from doing a duplicate vendor in the first place. So what happens if I didn't search for it? What will happen is whenever you go to validate, you'll get an error that says that duplicate vendor exists in SAP and it will not allow you to upload that. So now let me just enter in the data. And again, we've got some company code limitations here. So our developer has limited what we can put in based on our business need. And this can look and feel however you want it to. And you'll notice here, so these two are what we call cascading drop-downs, and this is a pretty simple concept. So if we do US, we're limited to US, but if I change it to a different country, be limited to what's inside that country as well. So I'm going to put it back to US. But think about that for a minute. So if, for example, for Material Master, if you have different material types and you require different things for those material types. So once you change the material type, you can change a whole bunch of different cells to be data-driven and change whatever is applied for that particular material type. It's just another example. There's tons of different ways you can do it. And you're not limited to 2 drop-downs. You can have as many as you want. So now I'm just going to choose Illinois and put in my postal code. And you'll notice here the email address is required. It's not required in SAP, but again, because our business process is requiring it, we're going to put that in. And if you want, there are third-party tools out there to validate that the address is correct, so I can validate to see if my vendor is good to go.